welcome. I'm Eric Miskell with EMSNOW, and welcome to this edition of EMSNOW Up Close. Medical electronics is a sector, an important sector of the EMS industry, and one that is always to stay current with. And there's a lot of activity. Gosh, looking back over the last years, probably even more activity than in previous years. But so I wanted to get an update and talk about kind of the issues that are advancing healthcare, and especially in the med tech section. So we have with us today Mr. Mark Stephenson. Mark is the Vice President and General Manager of the Medical Markets Division for Spartronics EMS Company. So Mark, welcome. Thank you for taking time to join us today. Why don't you begin by introducing yourself and tell us and the audience who Spartronics is exactly?
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Eric. Obviously, I'm, like you said, Mark Stephenson, and Spartronics is a EMS provider within this sector. We have three specific segments. We have our aerospace and defense segment, we have our industrial segment, and then the segment that I am responsible for, which is this medical device segment. To do that, we're a full service provider. We do the PCBA manufacturing, the value add, test services. We have design capabilities, as well as full finished product design, development, and manufacturing, as well as some logistics and some depot service. So we do the full spectrum, almost cradle to grave, for our customers that we partner with.
And people probably know the various elements that were put together to create Spartronics, but it came out of the Spartan EMS. There you also did acquisitions, which was, I believe, was Primus, and then Innovar was the most recent one. So the current organization is a conglomeration of the three.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. That's a great point. While the Spartronics name is new within the industry within the last year and a half, couple of years, the foundation goes back to the early 1900s from, like you said, the Spartan history. So we have a very strong foundation of which we are building and growing upon for our strength, so that as we build this, we know we have the foundation to be successful to do that. And what we have done is we have pulled ourselves away with the creation of Spartronics from the original Spartan, which was very focused on basically undersea warfare and that defense industry. And we felt in order to truly be a key partner and a supreme supplier to our customers, we needed to really carve ourselves away from that so we could really focus, have our own flag, have our own name. So we didn't get paralleled in with defense warfare versus medical device, industrial. And then, we do have aerospace and defense. However, it's a different segment within that warfare industry. And so that's why we're here today. And we're very aggressive of what we're doing, but we're actually going at the right pace so we don't get ahead of ourselves, especially when you think of the climate, what's going on with economic conditions, the supply chain market, COVID, all these indicators. We have to take note of that as we're building and growing ourselves to where we want to go to do that, to move ourselves forward. And we've been very fortunate. We've had some great acquisitions, getting those integrated. They're not quite fully integrated, but we're probably over 90% there to really get us a very strong hold to build ourselves going forward with a full global footprint to offer even low-cost country capabilities for our customers when that makes sense to do that.
Yeah. Good. Well, let's talk about the medical piece of this. Tell us about your experience in the medical device manufacturing area.
Sure. So I'll kind of start with me and then we'll get into the whole organization. But I've been in this medical device industry for well over 30 years. I've been on both sides of the fence. This EMS side, the contract manufacturing, design, development, as well as the product side with companies such as GE Healthcare, which was originally GE Medical Systems. I've done some things with Johnson & Johnson and Ethicon. I have had my own design and development firms that I have grown and sold to other people within the EMS industry as well. I've even started up some of my own medical device companies and brought those to fruition with some successful exits to do that. So it is an industry that I have a lot of passion around. And, I started out, I am a a degreed engineer, a geeky engineer, as I like to say. And then I went to the dark side of running companies and building and selling companies and helping products get to life, because there's nothing that's more touching than seeing a technology that you helped develop and it change and or save a person's life. And that is what we do, and that's what we bring, and that's the passion that we have at Spartronics with the culture, with what we're doing, because we understand what we're doing is important. It's mission critical. The failure is not an option. Things have to work to do that. And so the history with Spartronics is we've been building these types of products for well over 30 years as well, to do that as we go. As you know, we talked about our history before, to do that, but we really differentiate ourselves because of that passion and that culture of understanding the need and the necessity of and the importance of the products that we're doing. You know, we do the easy class 1, class 2 devices. Not all are easy, maybe that's the wrong term, but we also get into the PMA devices and the class 3 devices as well, which are those life-sustaining or new innovative products as well. And we love taking those technologies and getting them to the marketplace as we guide them through to where they go to really help and better people's lives out there.
And do you, within the Spartronics footprint, I'm looking at up on a screen over here, do you leverage particular facilities? Do you have centers of excellence for that, or are you able to leverage the entire footprint depending on customer location?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that. We do have centers of excellence for the medical device sector. We have our Watertown, South Dakota facility, as well as the Strongsville, Ohio facility, as well as our Milpitas, California facility. So those 3 facilities are our basic footprint for centers of excellence for medical device in North America. We also have our Viet Nam facility in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, which is a registered FDA site. We do industrial in that site as well. So that's a hybrid to do that, but that's on purpose because it's a low-cost country, and we bring that ability to our customers for when it makes sense. But we are doing some class 3 implantable type devices in that Vietnam facility. And then obviously, you know, we also have the Tecate, Mexico facility that we're bringing up, and we'll be getting registered within about a year's time as well, as a site as well. But what we do is we leverage across the entire footprint with our engineering teams and our operation teams so that we're sharing those best practices and those excellences so we all grow. Whether it's a specific A&D site or a specific medical device site, we understand that operations, systems, processes are very similar and very alike. There's different regulatory parameters of which we deal in. However, we bring that together for that strength and obviously to keep our operating excellence at a high level, as well as bringing value to the customer the way we do that. And it allows us to be very agile and flexible in an ever-changing landscape and marketplace.
Yeah. So it seemed inevitable with with what is referred to as began as the Internet of Things, then the industrial things, that we now have the Internet of Medical Things, right? IOMT. So, correct. So tell me about that market and why this is so important.
Yeah, it's as the geeky engineer part of it, you know, we always are looking for that future to do that. And what the medical device sector is really understanding in this market is that technologies are moving quick and they're moving fast. And you've got things like cybersecurity, which are ever important. And now you've got the onset of smart sensors and faster computing speeds and a lot of different robotics that are fitting into this. So this medical device sector, if you will, is a massive sector. It's, you know, roughly valued at about $450 billion to do that. And so to understand, to take these technologies that, you know, we have that passion around, you have to embrace these things. Now there's regulation and things like that that are involved so that, you know, you keep patients safe and you protect people from unnecessary incidents to do that. But with that need and that growing, emerging technology out there, moving quicker and quicker, the medical sector has to adapt quicker and faster. And us, as the EMS providers and the manufacturers of these products, we're having to adapt quicker and faster as well and embrace these technologies to provide those services to keep up with that velocity and that speed. I mean, the IOMT portion, that sector of the medical device market itself, has grown to like almost $280 billion itself to do that. I think that's a projection by like about 2030, but the compounded annual growth rate is 28%. So if you take 28% of that market, that's a big deal. And we have to be prepared to support that because that is where the industry is going. And clearly with the onset of COVID, that has accelerated a lot of things. I mean, just the way we're doing our meeting today, this is very common. And that is what doctors and physicians are needing to do. And what we have discovered is that this is a healthier way to potentially do some diagnostics. But in order to do that, to allow the physician to assess a patient, you have to have the technology allow you to do that. That's where these smart sensors come in, the faster computing speeds. So you can do the IOMT, the Internet of Medical Things, to do that. And you couple that then with robotics, which is another massive sector. I think it's identified to be close to 24 billion by like 2025. Within that big sector, you know, that's that computing speed and all that couples in with that IOMT. Take for existence the Da Vinci product that, you know, does this surgical navigation for these surgeons. It's allowing these very talented surgeons to provide surgeries or therapies that they couldn't do before because of the preciseness of being able to do the navigation of surgical instrumentation and things like that. At the same time, the surgeon's not even in the operating room now to do that. So that's yet another healthier environment for the patient and not introducing other potential contaminants and things of that nature to do that. So, you know, I'm geeking out here a little bit with that, but that just is how it drives into this IOMT and us as providers of these types of products and how they get into things like wearables and, you know, all these other things really fits that to do that.
Yep, and that's an excellent point. I was about to ask. It strikes me as you're talking that there's different segments of products associated with this. Like you just said, there's the wearables. There must be, and then you're referring to the remote piece too, right? And so there's stuff if whether you're the doctor's in his office and the patient's at home, right? That's
exactly the teledoc. Right?
Yeah, the teledoc. So there. Do you look at the IMOT in different segments like that? Are there buckets that they fall in, or is it?
It's so new that the buckets are changing, and or flipping. I mean, there's 4 typical basic segments within medical device markets. There's the therapeutics, there's monitoring, there's diagnostic, and there's surgical. So what I was just going on and talking about touches all of those. Yeah. So IOMT was first thought to be categorized. Well, this is all going to be about monitoring. Well, no, you've got diagnostics now going on because I'm going to put a smart sensor on a patient and I'm going to look at, maybe I'm looking at their QRS waveform in the cardiac world, and I'm going to diagnose. Well, now I'm monitoring and diagnosing. And then, you know, I'm talking about the Da Vinci. Well, that's surgical. And now they're providing therapies. Think about the diabetic industry and like what Dexcom and some of these companies are doing, where they have the smart sensor on the arm for continuous feedback loop of blood glucose and the sugar levels to do that. So it's across all the buckets, which is why we as a provider in this industry have to understand that so that we're providing back to our customers these segments. Because when you get into these different buckets within that, there's different regulations that you get into from the FDA and how you have to go about your validation, your verification in order to get these products to market as fast as we possibly can to better those people. So unfortunately, it's not just a black and white answer, and it's innovative and moving so quickly. That's why we have to be so agile and flexible to make sure we're providing what we need to our customers who are putting these products out to the marketplace to better people's lives.
Yeah. And it strikes me you have an interesting balancing act in that sector too. From a manufacturing side, you have the whole issues of reliability, quality, traceability, right?
Yeah.
But on the other side, this is a regulated industry, right? So you still have to worry about the security of sensitive data issue, right? And
HIMSS and HIPAA, that's a very big deal.
Right. And that must, but how does that confound the manufacturing as an EMS, or is that just stuff that's prescribed that you just have to adopt and somebody else?
Well, a little bit of that's prescribed, but what it gets into is you're getting into cybersecurity. And so now you're getting into this computing speed and you're getting into wireless technologies. Okay, I'm putting something over the air. How am I encrypting that to make sure that that patient data or that crucial data is specific? So when you're developing and even when you're manufacturing, you're updating software codes or platforms, all of that comes into play from the design side, certainly the manufacturing side, and then the logistics. And the fact that, at Spartronics, we're doing depot service and repair as well. So when these things come back from a doctor's office or an operating room or wherever, information's in there. We have to handle that very securely to make sure all that's maintained. So that cybersecurity is a big deal that falls into that sector. And then, of course, our friends at the agency are keeping an eye on this, and they're trying to understand the best regulations as well to put on this. So we're all learning as we go, and we're really partnering to make sure that we aren't slowing down the speed of the necessity of getting this there, but making sure that it's safe and equitable for everyone involved to do that.
Now, you mentioned COVID and how that's an accelerant here. Are there other drivers for this particular market that are important?
Yeah, the big one, we're all in business for a lot of reasons, but one of the most important reasons is obviously the money side of it. And by adopting IoMT and wireless technologies and these smart sensors, you're pulling a tremendous amount of cost out of the healthcare industry. So governments are extremely interested in that, especially people like big agencies such as the VA. Clearly, they have veterans across the globe that they try and service, and the VA doesn't always have facilities for these people to go to. But by the introduction of IoMT and the products that have to fit into that, they're now allowed to provide those services. So now you're going to have healthier people. And you get into the other side of healthcare, which is the mental health side of that, which is a big deal for the VA. Those things are very good, very, very big. And, we produce some neurological products as well, some things that have to do with depression and things of that nature. And once again, all of this wireless technology, all the smart sensing, all of that comes into play, and therapists and doctors are looking at this data. So they're monitoring the patient's activity. And the other part that falls into this is now you got insurance involved as well. They're going to be able to tell if a prescription or prescribed therapy is actually being used or not. Because a lot of times patients come back into there and say, yep, I'm taking my pills. Yep, I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Well, now you have sensors, wearables, all these types of things that the doctor, the physician, the therapist can look at and say, well, it looks like on this day and that day, there was no activity. Help me understand what happened to do that. So yeah, it's a little big brother-ish, but from a good side of it versus the other side of it, because we're trying to keep people healthier and head off worse situations by getting ahead of these things with therapies and pharmaceuticals. And
you just referred to some of the benefits of it, but from the patient side, what are the benefits that they derive? Is it other than the patient? Again, it's for the patient. Obviously, the rising costs of healthcare. It's much more economical for the patient. People in rural areas, like we talked about earlier, these patients, they don't have to go to the doctor, or they don't have to go to a hospital for a therapy or a clinic for some of these things that they need to do. So it allows them to stay in the comfort of their home, where it keeps them more relaxed. And so when they're being diagnosed, you don't see the acceleration in pulse rate and acceleration in potential SpO2 levels because of the shortness of breath, heart rates. They're just more relaxed and calm. And now we're getting more real-time data of what's really happening to do that. And it's just an ease. More people, there's some early data coming out, which is coming from some studies from COVID, that from doing this, people are more apt to seek out physicians or therapists' help because they don't have to leave the comfort of their home or their rural area, if you think of that, to do that. And so now we're able to take medicine, very broad term across the board, and bring it to more people to assist them versus, I'm thinking of my father as well, who just hated going to the doctor. And he would just wait and wait and wait. Things manifested, it got worse. And gosh, if he would have come in and saw me 2 months ago, it would have been very simple to do. Now we're going to have to do this. And so you get ahead of that, and that factors back into cost, quality of life, living, so forth and so on, to do those things. So there's benefits kind of around the board
as we're exploring and learning more about this.
Yeah. What benefits does it provide the OEMs that are making the devices then?
The products, so to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, in this medical device arena, we typically live the full life cycle of the products for as long as we possibly can because of the expense of design, development, manufacturing, getting things out there to do that. With these types of products, it's quicker, faster, and that cost is more efficient to get those things done. So for the big companies like the Johnson & Johnsons, the Strykers of the world, they're able to accelerate their product life cycles to do that. If you look at data from 20 years ago, a product life cycle, once a product actually got launched into the marketplace, could be upwards of 15 years before the next one gets introduced. Then you have this 5-year overlap where next generation's coming out while the old generation's fading out. So 20 years. So think of how fast technology is moving now versus it was 20 years ago. So with this type of product, with software upgrades, because there's so much more computing power that can be done, that product life cycle is going to reduce itself in half at a minimum. And instead of that 5-year overlap from first generation to second generation, it's probably going to be more like months of overlap. And that months is probably just from upgrading the field to do those things. Mm-hmm. So again, it's the speed. You know, some people talk about it as, you know, the speed of technology, SOT. Us engineers, we like our acronyms, right? But the reality is, from a business perspective, it's speed to revenue as well to do that and keeping those things moving to do that.
So from a larger picture view of it, I'm thinking about, you know, do you think that the medtech market is ready for this type of advancement in the global kind of healthcare industry?
I think we are on the cusp of it, for sure. I think there's some foundational things that we're still trying to truly understand what they are. Because the technology and the industry is moving so quick in this specific related area, the truthful answer is we don't know what we don't know. I mean, I can equate it back to COVID and the vaccines and all that came out, right? We knew what we knew, so we made the decisions based on the facts we had. We know a lot more now than we did then, and now we're adapting to it. And so what really is going to matter is the agility and flexibility to do that so that your foundation stays solid and strong to do that. So it's a little bit of changing how we think versus I have to have this foundation to build the empire upon versus, no, my foundation has to be flexible and agile enough. So as it moves and changes, I can move and change with it as well. Kind of a paradigm shift.
And EMS companies have always had to be that way because there's multiple customers, different needs. Even if it's within a medical sector, there's differences there. The EMS have to manage that complexity issue as well.
Always. It's the life we lead as an EMS supplier. Like you said, you know, multiple customers, multiple product lines, even, you know, because you balance your portfolios, you got multiple markets that you're dealing in. And so flexibility and agility is important. So that's why the EMS, in my humble opinion, is better suited to support this growth activity than the traditional vertical way of going about doing that, because we have those skills that need to be continually improving and pushing that envelope to raise that bar. But we understand that, and it's not a foreign concept to allow us to do that. So we're out in front of it to stay ahead of it so that our customers are getting these innovative products to the patients who need them as quick as we can to do that.
Now, we've talked about a lot of the benefits here that derive from this, and they're impressive. What's the other side? Tell me more about the challenges for manufacturers, for OEMs, that they can face with IoT.
Yeah, there's kind of two answers to that. There's the current challenges. And of course, anyone who picks up the newspaper, if anyone picks up newspapers anymore, reads their blogs, of course,
right.
Dating myself, is supply chain is a big issue, clearly, right now. And so that's the short term. We all know that. I'm stating the obvious. But the long term, which is part of this short term, is these technologies with these speeds and these computing powers, customized Cs, you know, we used to call them ASICs. Mm-hmm. We're getting back towards that trend again, where the computing power is getting so fast and so quick that the peripheral support for that is not keeping up with that technology. And so that's where we as EMS providers and even into the electronics industry have to stay ahead of it. Fortunately for us in the medical device sector, we see a lot of advances being done in other areas such as gaming and in some of these other areas. Transportation, believe it or not, is actually trying to push some of those envelopes as well to do that. And we can leverage those things into our industry segments to try and stay ahead. But it is a massive, massive challenge as we're doing that, because the demand, what we are seeing is great and getting greater. You've got an aging world that we're dealing with clearly when you look at all the different age groups across for the needs for these products. And so these things have to get out there as quick as we can before that need may evaporate. Yeah. Go and do that. So that's a massive challenge for us as well. And we just have to overcome, understand what we have to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And as we're talking, and we've been talking about the wearables things, it keeps coming to mind for me, of course, are cell phones and now people with their Apple Watches. Right? But those people are tracking and are much more aware because of apps and what's available to them, what's there. Now that's not regulated, so to speak, but I guess they could do something via those.
Yeah, a lot of the basic stuff is not regulated. It's more for self-healthcare management. Yeah. However, there are some in the pulse oximetry world and some other applications where people are getting therapies, and the bigger companies have created an app that they send to their patient that they load onto their device, and they're tracking those things. That is regulated as that goes through there, because it is a prescribed therapy. And that's where all this cybersecurity, the HIPAA, the patient information has to be so critical to do that. And so you're starting to see some of these therapies where you used to have to go into the doctor's office, maybe to get on a treadmill and things like that. We can do that at home now to do that. But that is a prescribed therapy. Therefore, it is regulated, and it has to go through that solid validation, verification, and release vigor, 510K, PMA, whatever it may be, to make sure it's safe and effective for the patient.
Okay, excellent. Mark, this has been very informative. I appreciate this. I feel much smarter coming out of this interview. and it's, as I said at the beginning, I mean, these devices proliferate in our lives nowadays, and electronics does. So it
is the world that is surrounding us, and the healthcare market is understanding we have to embrace it to advance this market as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'd like to thank you for your time. To my audience, what I'd like to say is he's Mark Stephenson. He's with Spartronics. He's also on LinkedIn. So if you want to get a hold of him, reach out to him. This is fascinating. You clearly know your market and what's happening here. And hopefully in the future, we can get some updates from you and what's happening at Spartronics, because it's a great story, I think. So
yeah, it's been my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to get the information out. It's about sharing the information so that we can all push ourselves to be better, stronger, faster. And I absolutely appreciate it. And please look us up, and happy to have conversations all the time. That's how we learn and grow.
Exactly right. Mark, thank you, sir. Stay safe out there in the snow, and hopefully we catch up again in the future.
Will do, Eric. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, sir.